If you're thinking of becoming an accountant in 2025, I strongly recommend you watch this video. My name's Callum, I'm a chartered accountant here in the UK, and today I'm going to be going over some of the pros and cons of being an accountant, as well as where the future seems to be going. Stick around, subscribe, and we'll dive right in. Typically, accountancy is seen as a very steady and safe career path. For the most part, that's true. Accountancy benefits from being recession-proof, in the fact that regardless of how well the economy performs, businesses are always going to need an accountant on hand to file their tax, do the books, manage their cash flow, and give them critical strategic advice for operating their business. Now, the same can't be said for other jobs in finance, which are very dependent on how well the economy is performing. So it's definitely a factor to consider. There's also the conception that you need to be a maths genius when it comes to being an accountant. But I promise you, it's not true. You need to be good with numbers and know how they work, but generally it's more about people and relationship building nowadays than anything. Accountancy has very much shifted from being a number cruncher, backwards looking, and in the past, to someone that can analyze data and portray it and present it to key decision makers in a simple, understandable way. That's really where it's going. Accountancy is also the language of business, as they say. Generally, regardless of where you go in your career, you're always going to have that fundamental knowledge of how the business actually works, which is extremely valuable and a skill that not many people have. So you're definitely going to be in demand, and regardless of the direction you decide to take. So what's actually changing with accounting? Well, I'm sure you've heard people say AI is going to take over everyone's jobs. And while that does sound scary, I really don't think there's much merit behind it. AI is obviously going to have a big impact on accounting, much like it is on every other industry, but it's really about the people who use AI who are going to be the ones that stand out and get ahead. I wouldn't fear it, I just learn how to use it and operate it within your job. Now, you may be worried that AI is going to replace the low-level tasks if you are just getting your start in accountancy with a career in tax or audit. But again, it's not strictly true. AI can only do so much, and ultimately there's always going to need to be someone there who signs off the accounts and checks everything is right. So while AI can and will have a big impact on accountancy and the future of accounting, I wouldn't let it put you off from going down that route. The demand from clients is also generally shifting from more of a number crunching, backwards looking approach to a data analyst forward looking approach. What I mean by that is typically in the past, accountants were just responsible for filing the accounts once a year, just showing the business how it looked in the past. Nowadays, many businesses need to be day to day or week to week in the business, seeing the numbers, seeing the cash, and making sure they can make accurate decisions based on what the now is showing. Accountants are prime for that. Being able to interpret this information and advise is going to be a key skill going forward, and one to really start honing in if you do decide to become an accountant. This also touches on these soft skills, which I think are more important than ever. Typically, you may see accountants as not really needing to speak to people as much and just sitting behind Excel doing their thing. The accountants are going to need to be more client-facing, speaking to the business owner, really understanding their problem, giving them useful information based on what their numbers are showing. Many business owners are going to benefit from someone who can actually read their balance sheet, read their income statement, look to where improvements can be made, and give them those improvements in an easy, understandable, and actionable way. It's all about a move beyond the numbers to provide real insight. The regulation is also increasing heavily in accounting, so it's something to pay attention to, particularly in audit, where there has been a lot of failure over the past 10 years with Enron and a lot of other scandals. There is a lot more scrutiny and change to be had when it comes to audit and regulation. It's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. But equally, a company is always going to need an audit if it's over a certain size. So the auditors are always going to need to adapt and know how the regulations are moving in order to stay completely up to date. Tech skills are also becoming absolutely essential in accounting. Not just Excel, but also data analysis. I'm seeing a lot of jobs needing skills like Power BI, Copilot, that kind of thing, in order to make actionable decisions and interpret data. This seems to be the shift in accounting too, and where that seems to be going. So having foundational knowledge in data analysis will help you a lot if you do decide to become an accountant. If we look at some of the pros of becoming an accountant, as I just touched upon, it's recession proof. Regardless of the state of the economy, companies are always going to need accountants, and they're pretty much always going to be hiring for them. Don't stress too much about that. It also helps to be a specialist, so going into audit, forensic accounting or tax is going to help you stand out and really nail your market and nail your niche. You can progress in a certain career path. The salary in accounting as well is typically pretty good. The entry-level jobs typically don't pay as high as other areas of finance, but with a bit of experience and a bit of time, you can earn pretty good money without some of the hours that other finance areas have. Again, it's good to pay attention to that. Not to say you won't be working hard as an accountant, because trust me, you probably will, depending on where you decide to go and train. But ultimately, the rewards are there later on in terms of the opportunities to enter other industries or to progress your way through practice. There's also a variety of industries to work in within accounting. As I said, pretty much every business and every area needs accountants, whether that's in industry or in banking or in government or even starting your own firm. It's very diverse and gives you plenty of opportunities and options to move around, explore areas you might be interested in, and take your accounting skills to these businesses and these industries. Flexibility is there as well. A large part of accounting is obviously just done through Excel and various other tools. It's very possible to have a fully remote job if that's what you're after, or be able to travel around the world and do accounts for people and do the bookkeeping, which I know people that do. There's obviously a lot of options there in terms of where you want to take your career. Now we've covered the pros, it's time to go over some of the cons. If you decide to do your charter like I did and become a qualified accountant, you're going to need to put in an awful lot of work for a 3 to 4 year period whilst you sit your exams. So with the ACA, which is what I did, there's 15 exams in total, and it can be quite intense because you are working a full-time job at the same time. So it is going to require quite a bit of sacrifice, which is worth noting. I had to give up on a few hobbies during busy times with studying and with work, meaning it can be quite difficult, and a lot of people may not want to do that if you do value more work-life balance and you don't want the pressure of exams, which is fair enough. But it is rewarding and it is worth doing if you are really willing to commit to it. Another con might be the fact that some areas are quite repetitive and people find certain things within accounting quite boring. Areas like auditing or tax may not be the most exciting, but if you are into that and you want to go into that, then you probably are going to find it somewhat interesting. But just be prepared that not every day is going to be completely exciting and full of thrills. Sometimes it can be quite repetitive. A lot of firms also have a busy season, particularly if you train at one of the larger firms, which means you're going to have to put in a lot of work and a lot of hours. I've got some friends there who said it's not easy. Even though it's rewarding, it can be very challenging, and you're going to need to put in the time and effort to really grind and get through those times, as well as perhaps sitting exams. So it can be quite intense and you may have to put in a lot of work there. Not so much a con, I think, but you are going to need to commit to lifelong learning, particularly if you do go down the professional qualification route, because there are CPD requirements. So you're going to need to spend a bit of time each month refreshing your knowledge, going through courses, attending events, and just keeping yourself up to date, because this stuff does change all the time. My honest advice for anyone wanting to go into accounting is do it if you like numbers and you like the structure and want to be able to generally help businesses and really understand how a business operates. Just be willing to put in the work and also commit time to your soft skills as well as your technical skills, because both do work hand in hand. Accounting can be a great launch pad into other areas of finance or entrepreneurship. So it does open a lot of doors, and I would highly recommend doing it if you are interested in going down the accounting route. Be prepared though, because it is evolving fast. There's going to be constant changes, particularly with AI and the way the world is working and going. So make sure you pay attention to that and keep your skills up to date. And with that, I hope that was helpful and gave you a bit more of an insight into accounting, some of the pros and cons of being an accountant, as well as the future of accounting. If you have any questions for me, leave them in the comments below and I'll get back to everyone. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.